Okay, guys, so today we're going to finish up completing the square. This is part 2 of completing the square. Last week we saw that we could give any type of equation, and I'm just going to kind of fake it like it's up here. And eventually, if we do this right, we complete the square and it ends up looking like that. Now remember, completing the square is not what it sounds like. Square in math means that little thing. So of course, all of our equations end up looking like these. And you can take a peek at all these and you guys can see, oh yeah, remember, it's answers, and most of you guys did really well on this. So part 1 was completing the square, getting it to look like this. Let me erase all this stuff. Okay, so after complete the square, the next thing we have to do is solve it. So here's the steps. It's actually fairly easy. Let me get in on this. Okay, so step 1 is to get rid of the square. Now remember, we're solving for x, right? So we want to get everything out of the way. So in your mathematical careers, you guys know that if I had x plus 2, the inverse is minus 2. If I had 2 times x, I would divide by 2. And now the new thing is, if I have something squared, square root cancels it. If I have a square root, square cancels it. So you can see that squares and square roots are inverses of each other, basically to make things disappear. So step 1, let's get rid of this square. So what we do is take the square root of that side. Remember, squares and square roots are inverses of each other that make each other disappear. So all that happens is you get this. Now, technically the parentheses are still there, but there's no reason to keep them, so I never write them. Okay, now remember, whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other. So I square rooted this side. I now have to square root this side. Now this is the part that took me a little bit when I was a student to figure out. Whenever you do the square root of a number solving, you always have to put a plus and a minus sign. Okay. Now the reason for that is, and most people don't give a crap about why, but I'm just showing you, hey, what is the square root of 9? You guys all know, oh, the answer is 3, because 3 times 3 is 9. But the other possibility is, wait a second, it could be negative 3 times negative 3 equals 9. So there really are 2 possibilities, one positive answer, one negative answer. So that's the reason why you have to put a plus and a minus sign anytime you take the square root of both sides. Now, in Colorado, I had a teacher who taught some stupid saying, but it actually made sense to me, and that was this. Anytime you take the square root of a number in an equation, let's just take a look at this, like this, he would always say, pretend that's a lightning bolt. And anytime there's a lightning bolt, it would always create positive and negative ions. Don't ask me. I know it sounds stupid, but it did work. Alright, so clear screen, and let's continue on. So we've got the plus and minus square root of 9, and then we go back to our normal stuff, which is just junk and divide. So we'll do a plus 6 to both sides. Now, this is where, again, we got to go back to our square root stuff. Remember, you're never allowed to combine regular numbers, right, with square roots. So the way you write this is very simple. X equals, you take your whole number, 6 plus or minus square root of 9. And if you guys remember the quadratic formula, a lot of times we would end up with numbers that look like 5 plus or minus, square root of 15 over 2 or something like that. So it looks kind of close to the old quadratic formula. Okay, so from here, we're going to do exactly what we did with the quadratic formula, which is test out our square root. In this case, the square root of 9, if we did it off to the side, you guys know the answer is 3. Okay, so if you think about it, what we have here is x equals, and we know we have 2 equations, right? So we've got 6 plus 3, and of course we have 6 minus 3. And I usually do that 2 separately. Sorry, that was pretty sloppy. Okay, and of course your 2 answers are 6 plus 3 gives you 9, and 6 minus 3 equals 3. So there's my 2 answers. Okay, by completing the square. Now that was a lot of stuff. So let's get back. Let's just kind of do a couple more together. All right. So let's take number 2. Again, here we go. We know that it's all about doing this. So we see a square. So to get rid of square, we're going to square root. Whatever I do to one side, I do to the other. And that lightning bolt creates positive and negative ions. So again, over here, make sure you put the positive and negative ions. Seems ridiculous, but it does work. Remember, square roots and squares cancel each other out. So it's pretty straightforward. You see the square? Square root it. That takes care of those. Whatever you do one side, do the other. All right, and then from here, we're minus 10, minus 10. X equals, we always put the whole number first, plus or minus square root of 81. Most of you guys, that's cake. Square root of 81, you can do it off to the side. I know most of you guys know is 9. So we're going to have 2 equations, minus 10 plus 9. Remember, we're looking at these 2 signs. And minus 10, minus 9. And then you just do your thing. So my 2 answers are going to be minus 1 and minus 19. And again. So this is a lot like the quadratic formula in the end as you split up 2 answers. Okay? Again, let's take a look at some other funky things. So so those 2 answers were both what we call rational answers, whole numbers, fractions, decimals, stuff like that. We've got to get to this uglier stuff. So here we go. So I get the square. I know in order to make a square disappear, I'm just going to take the square root. Whatever I do to one side, I do the other. And anytime I do a lightning bolt, I got to make sure I put the plus and negative ions. Okay, so I got plus minus square root of 7. Oops, sorry guys. And over here, the squares and the square roots disappear, which is why I did it in the first place. Okay, again, back to our regular solving, plus 5 to both sides. Put the whole number first, so I get x equals 5 plus or minus square root of 7. Now, if you take over to the side, square root of 7 is not a square. It's not even a perfect square. Remember my list, 4, 9, 16. None of those go into 7. So basically, you're done. In most colleges, courses that above this level, they will allow you to keep your answer just like this. 5 plus 7, 5 plus or minus 7 is what they say. If you do Delta Math, a lot of other books from college level, they'll allow that. Some teachers require that you put 5 plus root 7 and 5 minus root 7. But again, most don't. This is fine. Okay, let's do one more. Okay, so here we go. Square root of both sides, because I got a square. I'm trying to make the square disappear. Remember, inverse operations, blah, blah, blah. What makes square disappear? Square roots. Whatever I do to one side, I do the other. Ha! I'm not going to do the lightning bolt. Ooh, my bad. All right, so here we go. X plus 8 equals plus or minus, right? Because I introduced that. Square root of 50. Okay, and again, do my thing, minus 8 to both sides. Off we go. Negative 8 plus or minus square root of 50. Okay, now this is where we go back to the old days. Wait a second, 50 might be able to be simplified. For those of you guys in my class in money, anytime you see money, it's probably 25, right? The quarters. But again, I'll make my list. So you can't take the square root of 50. So 4, 9, 16, 25, 36. You guys remember the perfect square list. What goes into 50? Okay, so we know it's 25. So off to the side, we're doing, square root of 25. So, square root of 50. So square root of 50 breaks down into 25 and 2. And again, Mr. Rooney and Ms. Schulte do 2 separate boxes. Like this. We do 1, it doesn't matter. Out of the 25 pulls a perfect 5. And what's left is square root of 2. So we go back over here. And we basically just plug it in. Negative 8 plus or minus 5. Square root of 2. That's considered simplified. Again, if you give us this, I know you know what's going on. This is the official geek. Hey, if you can break it down, break it down. We saw over in the other picture, you might not be able to. Okay, so on the next page, you guys, we will give you about 4 problems to solve. 2 of them are rational, 2 of them are irrational. Give you your best shot, and then we'll put it all together on Wednesday.